Good morning and Happy New Year, everybody. My name is Sean Carlson from Blackjack 98 Enterprises. Today's date is Tuesday, January 19th at 8 o'clock in the morning. The blower that you see behind me is my next project, so let's take a look at it. This is a Poulan Pro gas blower. It's 25 cubic centimeters. This was brought to me by a returning customer. I had fixed his weed whacker for him, and he got back to me about 2 months later needing this to be repaired. What he said was when he pressed the primer bulb, it was not taking any fuel to the carburetor. That was his assertion about it. So I took it, and now we're looking at it together, all of us. Whenever you take on a project, you need to look it over completely to look for any other abnormalities, or get familiar with the stickers, the components, how everything was put together, if there's any damages. So, when I read the text, says that he had no fuel coming from, that means that when you press this, you're pushing. Oh, first of all, before I say anything like that, because this is a Poulan, anytime that I have ever dealt with a Poulan, there was a separate primer bulb not attached to the carburetor, meaning there's 3 fuel lines. Because of the fact that the primer bulb is attached to the carburetor, there is 2 fuel lines. And those 2 fuel lines are right there. So when you press the primer bulb, you're pushing the fuel back into the fuel tank, and then you're sucking the fuel into the carburetor. So pushing back into the fuel tank, sucking it in, pushing, sucking, pushing, sucking, pushing, sucking. Does that look familiar to you guys when he went and did that? This action here, hey? Okay, so we have an issue with the carburetor, and that means it could have been taken apart before and not put back together properly, or there is something with the fuel line itself. Maybe there's an air hole in the fuel line, or maybe there's something wrong with the fuel filter, or maybe the fuel line is mixed up with the fuel filter and the return is actually sitting about an inch below the surface of here, which is not touching the fuel at all. And as we can see, there's fuel in there. Right? It's 40-to-1 mix. So that was his assertion. When he pressed that, he couldn't get it running. I'm assuming he couldn't get it running because when he pulled this, nothing was happening. Okay, so therefore, what we're going to do is what I normally do. A full engine tear down and rebuild. Let me turn the camera around. The reason why I do full engine tear down and rebuilds is because it's not going to diagnose one single-handed problem that the customer might tell me. It's going to diagnose every other problem that there could possibly be with the engine. Not necessarily the carburetor, because it could be something with the fuel tank, the fuel filter, the spark plug, the compression, the flywheel, the magneto, the electrical switch. It could be any of those. If we do a full engine tear down and rebuild, we will be able to diagnose all of those during that tear down, and when we put it back together, it will be a fully functioning unit. So with me in particular, I do full engine tear down and rebuilds regardless if the customer says to me that, oh, it's just a carburetor issue. It's never just a carburetor issue, because it could be something that is affecting the carburetor. A carburetor mixes the fuel and the air for the cylinder. So depending on the machine, and in this case it's a blower, it's pretty straightforward, simple. And to be honest with you, the engine that is used in a blower is the same engine that is used in a weed whacker. I'll show you guys that throughout the video, the differences and how it works and how it gets put together. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start assembling the tools, and then we're going to start taking this apart one by one, and you're all going to see me do it. There we go. Okay, first things first, in order to take out these screw holes here, we're going to need a 4mm Allen wrench. Let's take out the fuel filter cover and see what we're looking at. Okay, so the fuel filter looks a bit dusty and dirty. We can rinse this out with water. It doesn't look like it's going to crunch or crumble. If this is used and fallen apart, you can actually cut a new one from a sponge, a cleaning sponge. This here will be rinsed out in hot water later. We'll just put it to a side. That same Allen key will be able to take off this cover right here. Okay, so this is the, looks like, or well, what is that? It's the throttle. Oh, actually, this is the throttle. This is the choke. Okay, so this is choking it. This is run, choke, run. When you have it in choke, you can press the trigger here and it'll go into run position. Okay, so there is what looks to be three screws holding this in. So 1, 2, 3, and that looks, oh, and there's one right there, 4. Okay, so we're gonna take this off, and then we're gonna take this off. Alright, in the last video that I did with the weed whacker, a lot of people were grunting and groaning, griping and groaning about the screws. They were saying, you didn't show what type of screws it came out, where they went in. So here they are. Okay, there's 3 of them, like I said. Anytime that you're taking out screws, take a mental note what they look like. This one here. Okay, and then put them in a container. I save all my containers for this specific purpose. There's 3 of them. After you take those 3 out like I had showed you, then this comes out nicely without the spark plug being in the way. Just like that. Voila. Now let's look at this. Wow, it's somewhat pretty clean, not bad. Okay, so we're going to put that right there. Now we're going to look at the engine. Okay, so we have a clean out right here for the bottom of the cylinder, which is accessible to the crank, the flywheel, or the bottom of the crank, the whatever, and we can scoop out any debris that could have gotten into the engine. We got a good look now about the muffler. You can see the numbers on there. We can sort of see over here, and you know what, this is a bit loose because I went and loosened this up. So let's take this out. Before I take this out, I want to let everybody know there's going to be long screws. Those screws hold this against the carburetor, and that carburetor against this part here. Okay, and this part is held by itself against the engine. So these are easily distinguishable because of their length. As you're about to see that? Look at that. There's another one just like it. Because I'm holding a phone with one hand and working with the other, this is going to fall down on me, I know it. And then this comes off. Woohoo! That's a bit gross and dirty. That dirt actually does get into the engine if it makes it past the filter. So, when we're looking at the carburetor now, we can see that, ooh, yeah, look at that, eh? Remember, this is choke, this is running, this is now loose. So, this can now be disconnected from the, however you disconnect it. Okay, well, I'll figure that out later. But these can now be disconnected too, so you can just take pliers and pry this out, or you can just cut them off, or whatever. Because of the fact that I'm going to replace these lines, I'm just going to cut them off. I'm going to sever there, then I'm going to be able to take this, and remove it from this pin right here. And this is the first time that I have ever seen a metal shaft, metal cable with a throttle to be connected directly to the throttle. Okay, so I'm gonna release this carburetor from the gas tank. Oh, and before I do, actually, yeah, we're gonna do that, and then we're gonna take a compression check with a compression checker. We're gonna see what the compression is like in the engine. So we're gonna take the spark plug off, put this part here into the hole, and then we're gonna pull this like, and then it's gonna have a reading, and we're gonna do that after I take this off. Okay, so I'm about to take out the spark plug, and this one here in particular was stuck on there. It probably was glued in, it was probably JB welded in or something, but I had to use a lot of pressure just to get it off. It was a 3/4 inch socket, a 3/4 inch long socket. I want to tell everybody how to do it. So you got your socket on there, okay? Now what you're going to do is you're going to want to put a lot of pressure onto it, turning it. While you got the pressure on it in this direction, right? Then you're going to give it a light hit with your fist and go boom. And that's going to loosen it a little bit. Make sure that you have something that this entire unit is going to be resting against, because this is going to also be turning in that direction in this circular motion that you are making. And whatever you do, if there's something like this that you have that could possibly break because of the whatever it is, secure this before you start turning this and you go to hit it, okay? So I finally got it loose, just like that, 3/4 inch. And then let's look at the spark plug. It doesn't look too bad. We can clean it up with a wire brush and test it with a spark plug checker, and we'll do that in a later video. What we're going to do now is we're going to take our compression tester and put it in. Okay, now we're going to put it down, and we're going to pull this here apart, and we're going to take a reading. Okay, so let's see here. Now let me prop my phone up somehow. Okay, I'm going to give it 10 pulls. So here we go. And it looks to me like we got a compression reading of just under 70, and it's not going down, it's holding it. So we're good. We should be good. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to check for spark. And the way that we do that is we put the spark plug back into the engine. We are not going to tighten it up like Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan tight. It's just a little bit tighter than any other tightness that you can think of. And of course I'm doing this with one hand. There's a lot of things I like doing with one hand. We're just going to hand tighten this. Now we're going to put our checker onto the spark plug. See, the boot on the checker goes on the top of the spark plug. It's like that, clicks into place. And then this part goes on to here, and that clicks into place. Just like that. So this is what our spark plug checker should look like when you're looking for spark. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the cord and see if there's a little red light right here. There should be a little red light. And of course, I just set up my camera again. Okay. Oh, you know what? The switch. Oh, there's a switch. There's an on-off switch here. I don't know which one is off or which one's on. I can't even see it. Darn it. Let's try that again. I'm going to hit this part here. That must be off. This must be turning it off. I don't know. But we're going to look at it again. Okay, so I'm not seeing anything, so there could be an electrical issue. And we're going to have a look at that when we take this apart. Let me put this on pause. Okay, so looking at it carefully, if I was to take this off, you can see that this switch here, there's a wire that runs down here, right there, and goes in behind that area. Now, if you find that you're not having any spark, it could be because of the on-off switch. So, like I said, I can't exactly see what the switch looks like unless I take its plastic cover off. And there could be an electrical issue way back into there. Maybe it's not even connected. Maybe somebody worked on this before and they put it together wrong. So having said that, let me flip the camera around. This is one of the reasons why I do full teardown and rebuilds. We just found out that we do not have any spark, and I don't know why. It could be an electrical issue. Electrical issue with no spark is pretty common. So let's carry on with our teardown. Something I noticed, this just fell right off. A lot of you might not realize it, but that little hole right there needs to correspond to that little hole right there. Okay, so let's look at something here. I got a pointer. That hole needs to line up with that hole. It's very important, okay, because this has to do with the pressure that's already in the engine. And by putting it in like this is the correct way to do it. You cannot put it in this way. This is wrong. If you were to put it in this way, it would look weird, okay? And that hole would suffocate. So this is going to be cleaned up, and we're going to put that right there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take out the fuel tank. And the way that we do that is we use a T25 screwdriver, screw bit, Torx bit, okay? Nice. I just loosen them up. Here we go. Good, good. There's a warning that I want to tell everybody right now. Do not trust the gas tank just because it's holding. It could be holding at this level right here, but up here it could be leaking somewhere. So take the lid and tighten it, and make sure that when you put this aside, you're not leaking gas anywhere. And if you do, get some rags, have them ready, just in case there's a fuel spill. So I'm going to take this out, I'm going to put it aside. Okay, these are the screws that were holding in the fuel tank. This is what they look like. Okay, Torx heads. I'm going to put them in with the other screws. And I just looked at this over, analyzed it. There's no leaks anywhere. So we're going to clean this up. We're going to empty the gas out into a gas receivable container, and we're going to flush this gas tank out. And when we do, we're going to look at the lines in the bottom inside the tank to see what is hooked up to what. Okay? Well, that'll be later. Right now what we're going to do is we're going to use the same head to take off this cover right here. And you know what? I can do that right now while we're on video. When you hear that snap when you're taking off screws, that means it was never taken off before. That was factory installed screws. Want to hear that snap again? Here we go. That lets you know that nobody else has taken this off previously. You can do that too if you were to use Loctite. Do I use Loctite? Yes. In certain cases I do. This particular piece is important, so it would be very important that you use Loctite. I have a feeling that what we're going to see is we're going to see a gasket between this plastic cover and the engine. Once again, pay attention to the screws. This is what those look like, okay? Torx heads. Then this comes, now this I'm assuming is going to be locked onto there with some glue or a gasket or anything. It's not going to come off just by hand, and whatever you do, do not force it. Take it off lightly, pry it off lightly. You gotta look for a screwdriver here. Let's use this one. We're just gonna ease it off, nice and slow, nice and slow. Just like that. See that? There we go. There we go. If we rip this off, we might break a plastic part, and depending on the age, plastic breaks. This way everybody knows. Oh, there's oil in there. Okay, let's look at this. There's a little rubber O-ring that you might not be able to see. But one thing is for sure, what I can see is oil. Right there. Oil is not necessarily good in this part of the engine. We're going to wipe that out, and over excess of oil will interfere with compression and firing. In fact, that's probably why it wasn't firing. Who knows? But this is where you clean out the bottom of the engine with the crank. Okay, so now we got that. What we can do is we can remove the engine now from this side. So let me flip this over. Okay, so now that we got this turned around, I'm going to open this. We're going to get into the engine, which is behind this fan blade. If we were to take off this nut, that means the fan blade would be loose, but we can't get it out because of this hole here. Okay, so because this is attached to the engine by the crank, that means this cover's got to come off, which means all these screws here have to come out. Okay, except these two on the bottom, because those are what hold in that part. In fact, they might need to come out too, but we have a lot. So when you take these out, make a mental note what they look like, where they go, and then take a picture and whatnot, and then put it into your container. So I'm going to start undoing all of those. Okay, so all the screws are out, and they are all right here in the corresponding positions of where they came out of. Okay, so let's look at the screws. They all look like they're the same, and I would say that they're the same, so it doesn't matter if we get them all mixed up into one pile. But make a note of them, take a picture if you want to, yada yada yada, and put them into your container like that. Now this can be taken out apart. Then when you do, be mindful that there are parts and pieces that are going to fall apart, like that switch right there. So we can take it off carefully. And if you look at the wiring on that, yeah, I can see that, I can see that. Good, good. Okay, you know what? I can't do two things with one hand. Okay, so I got it separated. These two screws came from the bottom right here. Okay, so let's look at this part. Let's look at it. Look for any other signs of damage which could affect it. There is none, so this can now get put down nice and neatly. And then we got this off. Okay, so let's look at the other side. This is what we're looking at. Okay, so this is the switch. Look at the wiring. Look at the way that the throttle handle is in there positioned. Okay, make a visual note and take pictures if necessary of everything that is happening here. Now we got to take off this nut. This nut is already loose, and the way that I did that was I took a screwdriver, I stuck it into here, into the place where this would bind, and then using a 1/2-inch wrench, I slowly pressured it off. I didn't, I was slowly, like slow, and then I was like arm wrestling it, and then clunk, and then I went and undid it nicely. Do not, under any circumstance, use a hammer drill for any of this. Don't use a hammer drill at all. Use your muscles, okay? Otherwise, you're going to strip the plastic threads from the metal screws, okay? You can do that. So we take this off. Make a note of the washers, the nut positions, how they are put in. They are in there for a reason. That's a lock nut. This is a regular washer. This comes off nicely, just like that. Okay? Look at that. See that little knob right there? Something tells me that there's a keyway. And there is one right there. So this can now slip off just like that. Voila. Okay, cool. Now, those two bolts are holding in the engine, as well as those top two ones. Oh, so those are our T25, if I remember correctly. Yes, they are. So I'm going to take those two out, and because those are holding in the engine, that means they're fine threads. Anytime that something is holding into the engine, there will be fine threads. If there's two plastic pieces being held together, they will be coarse threads, as we have seen right here. These are coarse thread screws. Do not get those mixed up, okay? Fine threads are only used to attach directly to the engine. So I'm going to take those out. Okay, the engine is out. Look at that. So the rewind. What the living hell? Holy fucking shit. This is the first time that I'm seeing a rewind going down a metal channel like this right there. There is 2 points of resistance. There's one right there at elbow and that one right there, which explains why this was so hard to pull. In fact, I might need to look at that and clean that line out. But yeah, even doing this, I can tell that there's resistance just because of that. So we're gonna take a look at this rewind and clean it up a little bit better, because there's probably grease and grime under there too. So let's look at this. Okay. The wiring and stuff that I took apart from there was attached to the magneto. So I'm going to put this right here. Now we're going to look at the engine. Ta-da! Now, earlier you heard me talk about this being the same engine that you would use in a weed whacker. And yes, this actually is the same type of engine that you can use in a weed whacker. You see, right here would be the flywheel and stuff that when this is spinning, it would attach to the flywheel because it expands, it grabs it, and the shaft for the weed whacker comes out this direction, and a cutter line is like right here. And then this is the carburetor as before, and the switches are the same. But yeah, this is the same type of engine that you would use in a weed whacker. So let's what we're gonna do. Oh, look at that leaf. How does the leaf get into there? It's a leaf blower. Okay, so we're gonna take off all these little fuzzies, and we're gonna look at this wiring bit here. Don't get these terminals mixed up with the switch. They are there for a specific reason. Okay, so we are going to test the magneto out. We did test it with the spark, and there was no spark, but there could be another issue that we are not seeing. So we're going to clean all these terminals up, and we're going to take off this part here. We're also going to take off the muffler. Okay, and this flywheel can come off. This is the spacer, which removes nice and easily. I got the feeling that this particular flywheel has a built-in keyway attached to this shaft. And the way that we take this out is we just tap it lightly with a rubber mallet. We go tap, 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 tap on both sides, and then this can just slide right out. So there's a gap between the magneto and the engine magnets. The magnets are right there. These are the magnets north and south. They're supposed to be gapped right there nicely. There's supposed to be a gap. And I used 2 pieces of paper in this particular case, but yeah, we're gonna take this off. So 1, 2, 3, off. But before I do, these are the 4 screws that were holding that onto the engine. Okay, so make a note of that. Take a picture if necessary, and then put them into your container. So let's start with the magneto. Looks like a T25. Is that a T25? T25. Yes, it is. Okay, so I'm going to take this off. Okay, so the engine is now completely stripped of its components. Let's look at the muffler. This muffler was housed by these items here. This is the heat shield, which is attached directly to there, with this following attached just like that, and then the muffler, of course, going there like that. Okay, so these screws were attached to the muffler. These are T30s, and just by looking at the muffler and all the components, normally these are black, and there's a heavy amount of carbon corrosion around the mouth of it, as well as on the mouth of the engine itself. Not in this case, not even on here. So the muffler is pretty good. This part here says the same thing. It's pretty good. So we'll put those aside. Make a mental note of these. Once again, fine threads attached to the engine. Put them right there. Now, this part here is just a little bit gross, and it can be cleaned up. That little gasket that you see around here, there's nothing wrong with that. There's no rips, tears, no deformations at all, but this will be cleaned up. I'm going to put that right there. This was the bolts that were holding in that part that's attached to the engine on this side. Okay, make a mental note of these. Do not confuse these with the muffler bolts. Just impossible to do that. Okay, and put these right there. Now, remember I was telling you that you can take this off by giving a little light tap with a mallet or something, and I did that. So there's a washer. Be mindful of this washer. It's important. And we can slide this right off. Okay, now let's look at there's a keyway right there. And when I look at that keyway, it's a good condition. There's nothing wrong with it. This can be cleaned up nicely. All the fins are in place. If any one of these fins were missing, then that means you have to get a new flywheel, because this will cause it to be unbalanced at high speeds, cause it to shake. Which would mean it would wear out the bearings. Okay, so we got some crud here, and we'll clean this up a little bit better. And now we can look at the piston. So you can see the piston at the carburetor side only, and not the muffler side. So let's analyze this. So this here's the carburetor side. This here is the muffler side. With respect to the fins here, when you see that the carburetor side is lower than the muffler side. Okay, so on the muffler side, you can actually look at the top of the piston. On the carburetor side, you can only see the side of the piston. So let me spin this so that it goes up and down. There's, right about there, you can see that there's black on top of the piston. Not a big deal. But when we look at the rest of the wall, it looks pretty clean. So there's no scratches on the inside of the carburetor on the piston. You know what I meant. And we're going to do the same thing for the muffler side now. So looking at that, there is, wow, it's pretty good. There's hardly any scratches on the piston on the muffler side. There's blackening right there, so we will clean that up. The way that I clean up the carbon on a muffler, I go into my arsenal here. I go into my arsenal and I use Easy Off Oven Cleaner. Okay, this stuff works the best for cleaning out carbon on a piston. So that's what I'm going to spray the hell out of it in there. I'm going to spray it into here too. And then we're going to look at the top of the I think we can sort of see the top of the piston from this side. Okay, this is the top. Can't really see it at this angle. Yeah. Anyhow, when I can see it from here, there's just a little bit of blackening on top of the piston, and this will ultimately get rid of that. Okay, so now, when it comes to accessing the piston, you're going to need to take the cylinder head off. And the way that you do that is this hole here and this hole here. Those two access the nut or the bolt that is in there. So if you stick something in through this hole here, you're going to hit that nut. And I'm going to assume that's a T30 or maybe a T40. I'm not sure. It could be an Allen key. It's kind of too much corrode. It's an Allen key, yeah. I can see from right here. It's potentially a 6mm Allen key, and this cylinder head has probably got a gasket in there, and if there is no gasket, it's probably got a sealant, which is gluing this down there. Now, remember I said that there is a compression of just under 70? Compression loss can come from this surface right here. It can also come from the seal right around here, as well as right around here, as well as the spark plug. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4 areas where you can lose compression. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dunk this into a pool or a pail of hot water after I spray it with this, and we're going to get this all cleaned up. Okay? And while we're washing all these parts, we're going to test the magneto. We're going to put it back onto the engine. We're going to spin this with a drill. And then we're going to put our spark plug tester back onto here to see if there is a wiring issue on here. And you can check this with a multimeter if you wanted to. But the easier way would just be to put it on here, spin it with a drill, and then check it with a spark plug tester. Okay? So let me start cleaning all this. Okay, so I found a problem. So the guy said that it was not getting any fuel to the carburetor, and it was because of a clogged fuel line. Now, I don't know if you can see it, but where's my pointer? I'm looking for my pointer here. Where's my pointer? Okay, I can't find it, but let me use this. Okay, so you see right here, that is a clogged fuel line. That white shit is clogging up this part of the fuel line. This one is the return. This one is where the fuel is coming from. And when you look, that is what we're looking at. So, oh, there's something else in there. Are those earbuds? No, it's not earbuds. Oh, that must be the thing that's attached to the fuel lid. But yeah, that there is clogged, which is why he was not getting fuel to the carburetors. So what we're going to do is, because of that, we're also going to look at the carburetor itself, and we're going to test this out. We might not need to strip this apart, so we can just do a test by putting a fuel line attached to this to see if it still works. And if that does work, then we don't need to take this apart and replace the internal components. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to dunk it into my pail there and wash it, as well as the engine. Everything else has been washed. And I'm just going to wash this now. And we're going to take that stuff out of there and look at it. We got the fuel filter in the fuel and the return, which sticks this far from the top of the tank. This is only for a top-mounted fuel tank. There are some that are attached to the side and some that are attached to the bottom. Okay, so because of the fact that when you look at this, those holes are on the top. The fuel sits on the bottom. Okay, doesn't matter with this test that we're going to do. We're going to hook it up. And I can't do two things with one hand. Okay, having everything properly hooked up, we're going to press this and we're going to watch the fuel flow. Oh, it is working. It is working. The fuel is now inside the carburetor. It's building up pressure in there. It's making its rounds. It's circulating. It's not returning as much as it's supposed to be. So there could be something wrong with the carburetor, which means we would need to look at it. Now, because of the fact that this came off and somebody tried to wiggle, do something with this, I have a very good feeling that maybe they messed around with the carburetor too. That is a very real possibility. So, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this apart and replace the internal components. And that's that. Okay, so we're going to try it again. What I did do is I took everything apart and flushed it out. And the way that I did it was I used WD-40 and brake cleaner to clean it out, and used the little straw inside all the little holes and blew it out. So it's full because I already did it. But this is what it should look like when you press the primer bulb. See that? That's normally working good. And when you release it and you let it sit, it's going to build up to just a smaller bubble. And when you press this, there should be no leaks absolutely whatsoever anywhere. This should be like a tight seal. So now we know that this is a good flowing carburetor. For whatever reason that one fuel line was clogged, it was probably clogging up in the carburetor here too. Since we got that all cleaned out, this can now go back into the engine, and this can all be now put together properly. And what we're going to do is we're going to replace the fuel lines with brand spanking new ones, which look exactly like this one here. Alright, so what I have done a long time ago, I ordered off of Temu or Wish or Amazon, and I ordered a metric drill bit set specifically for this purpose, and we're going to find out why. Okay, this here is a 4mm drill bit set, a 4mm drill bit, and it fits just comfortably into this hole, and there's a little bit of give, as you can see. Now we're going to put it into this hole. This one is a little bit larger and there's more give. Okay, so we know this hole here is a 4mm drill hole. This is a 4.5mm drill bit, and it fits into this one just snug. Okay, and it is tight. There's hardly any give when I will and wiggle it around. So when we try to put it into this hole, it does not fit at all whatsoever, no matter how hard I push. So therefore, ladies and gentlemen, be careful of these holes. One is bigger than the other, or on certain models, they can be the same size. But get yourself a metric drill bit set so you can test out this theory. Now, when you go to put them in, you need to use the proper size of tubing that will fit and squeeze into them. The tubing cannot fit loosely into there like this, like you see here. Just because it goes in nicely like that doesn't mean it fits, because there's going to be air leakage on the outside of the tubing on that hole, and that means there's going to be a fuel spill. So the tubing has to fit just nicely in there, that it's snug enough that it's not going to pinch the interior of the channel that's preventing the fuel. Okay, and it has to fit comfortably, that it's going to fit onto the ports here, where it just squeezes onto there. If you put a tube onto here and it just loosely fits, that means there's going to be an airtight, that means there's going to be an air leak, and that's going to reduce the effectiveness of the carburetor when you are using it. So use a tube that fits nicely to snug onto there, but also fits into this hole. It's going to create an airtight seal. Okay, An airtight or an air leak would reduce the efficiency of the engine. Okay, so we're at the part where we're going to check for spark by using the magneto. Before we can do that, we need to put the spark plug into here. And we need to make sure that the spark plug actually does work. And the way that we do that is with a spark plug checker. This thing connects to power by using an RC connection, which plugs into regular household power. And you put your spark plug into there, you close the lid, and you start it by turning the knob to the desired revolutions per minute. So 500, 1000, blah blah blah, 6000 RPMs. So I hope you are able to see the spark. So here I am, turning it on. We're going to go to 1000. Woo, there's a spark. Now we're going to go higher. And that's halfway right there. And I cleaned up this spark plug with a wire brush. As you can see, that looks good. So we get a good spark. As a result of cleaning up the spark plug, it's now working. So we're going to turn it off. And now we're going to we're going to unplug it. We're going to take it, put it into our spark plug here, and then connect it to that. And then we're going to jimmy it up by turning this flywheel, which is a 4 piece of paper gap. A 4 paper gap. No, I can't do anything with one hand, so yeah, let me get this all. Yeah. Okay, so here we go. I'm gonna hold it down, I'm gonna spin it, and you should see like an orange glow or something like that. Yep, and I see it, and I think you see it too. So now we know we have spark on our spark plug. Hold on, let me put this on. Okay, now the reason why it was not sparking before, because as I found out, this part here with the threads and this washer was completely covered in gunk. There was some slippery, slimy kind of gunk that was all around here, and I went and dipped it in CLR and WD-40 and oven cleaner, and I got it nice and clean like you see here. Not only that, but this edge here was also just as corroded, so there was no proper electrical connection until I cleaned it all up. So as you can see, there was spark, and this is a good spark plug because we tested it. So therefore, we can now put this all together. Yay! Now that the engine is somewhat put back together, we're going to look at the rewind like we were talking about. So there's 3 screws here that are 4 millimeters. One right there, one right there, and one right there. So I'm going to take these out, and then this should technically just come out nicely. The 3 screws are right there, and as I had said before, because we're dealing with plastic parts being held together with other plastic parts, they are going to be coarse thread screws. This comes out just like that. And now we have this, which we just have to remove very carefully. There is springs that are at the bottom of this on the other side, and I'm pretty sure if I was to take this out, it would boing. So I'm going to remove it very carefully and slowly. You know what? If it goes boing, you're gonna watch me. We're gonna go boing. And yeah, we're going boing. Look at that. Boing boing. Put my finger in there. Yeah. Okay. You know what? Let me put my phone down. Okay, so it went boing, and it's right there. I just dropped it. So in here does not look too bad. We are going to clean that out a little bit. It looks like some type of dirt and whatever. This here was wiped out too. just so everybody knows, if this does get too greasy and grimy, it won't rewind like it's supposed to. I can feel it right here, and it is a bit sticky. We're going to take some WD-40 and we're going to make this a nice clean surface. The line itself is kind of grungy and grody, and it is just a little bit stiff. I can feel like the sediments that's coated this is not flexible like it could be. So we're going to replace it, and we're going to put in new line, which is this right here. We're going to make a mental note. Take a picture of this if you want, just so you know what it's supposed to look like when you take it out. And then measure the length of this to this, and then put it back together exactly like you took it apart. Okay? And there's a specific way that this goes back into this coil here, and I'll show you that in a bit. So let me work on this. Okay, so I got this put back into here, and just so everybody knows, when it does go into here, that tab that you see has to be curled around in a certain way so that way it matches with that channel there. So it goes in like this, and it'll fit nicely into that channel. Okay? And you just gotta put it into there nicely. La 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 la. Okay, now this part here, you see this sharp end of that groove? That will grab that little knob on the inside of the spring coil. So you're gonna put it, you're gonna put that, and it should just like snap or just fall into place when you put it into there. Just like that, okay? Now we can put it back to its right here. And you see this notch right there? You're gonna use that to put tension on it. So you're gonna put that right there, put the rope, you're gonna spool it around, put it into that notch, and then you're gonna hold it, and you're gonna do this. You're gonna go all the way around just like that with a notch, and that's what's going to put the tension on the spring. And then you're just gonna let it go, and then go through the hole like you're supposed to, okay? And then the tension will just reel it up on its own. I have several videos that I haven't previously that I have done how exactly to put this together. I don't have time to put it to on this video because of the daylight that's out there. Sun's going down. Okay, so just be mindful of how this gets put together when you take it apart. Okay, so after everything's put back together, I have 3 winds, full revolutions on the spool, and this is what it looks like when you pull it out. Okay, so yeah, it works just a little bit better than it did. These here 2 joints, like this total configuration is just a little bit off, and it's causing it to be stuck just a little bit. I mean, like, doesn't matter how much lubrication that I used, it's still gonna do that. So now we can put everything back together. Okay, so I cleaned up the switch. This is just one of those single pole action switches where you just push it and it disconnects the power and it shuts it off. This is the cover on that, and as you can tell now, it is somewhat a little bit cleaner than it was. There's a lot of grungy gunk on there. So yeah, so you can definitely see this over that switch. Now I'm just going to put it back together on that. Now we're at the last part where we have everything put back together. Woohoo! And as you can tell, everything is clean. It is shiny, sparkling, wonderful. I found that there's just a little bit of damage on the handle right there when I first started. That's not a big deal. So now we come to the part where we're going to put gas into it. And when you look at the lid here, it says 40 to 1. When you read the instruction manual, which I have done, it says that you're supposed to use unleaded gasoline with two-stroke oil. So I choose this type of two-stroke oil because it is a high quality two-stroke oil, and I'm also using premium gasoline, which is 91 octane. So we're going to put that into here, and then we're going to put it into our gas tank, and then we're going to start it up. Okay, so now that we got our gas mixed into there, now we're going to hit the primer bulb, and we should be watching fuel flow into this tube that you see is curved and leaving through the tube that is straight. So here we go. Yes, that's what we're supposed to see, is exactly that. Good, good, good. And the primer bulb is full. Look at that when we press it. It's pushing in, sucking it in, topping it up. And you can see here, it's working. Okay, so now comes to the part we're going to start it up. So let me set my camera up and you can watch me do it. Okay, so before we start this up, we're going to go through starting procedures. So, first off, if there is an on-off switch, turn it on. In this particular case, this is a continuous on switch, and you just hit it once to flip it off. Okay, so therefore you don't have to worry about this, because once you hit the off button, there's a spring in it which turns it immediately right back on. So all you have to do is just hit it like that, and it'll go off, off, off. Okay, so we don't have to worry about that. Now we're going to put it into either start or run. What is the difference? So this is another way of saying choke, run, choke, run. Okay, so you take this and you put it into the choke position, and what that means is that the engine is now running completely, totally on fuel after you hit the fuel primer bulb. So it'll be sucking fuel directly from the fuel tank. And then once you hear it start a little bit, like then you can actually hit the trigger, and it'll automatically go into the run position. And then you can just variable hit the trigger slowly or whatever. So you can go fast or just slowly. Okay, so we're going to put this into start, and then we're going to hit this a few times. Now, as a result of me rebuilding this entire thing and cleaning it with soap and water and cleaning product and WD-40 and all that stuff, you will see smoke. So it will smoke probably for about a minute before the engine gets really hot and burns off all the excess soap off. Okay, so that's what you will see happen. And I'm going to prop my camera up now, put it on pause, and I'll start for you exactly the way I said. Hit this trigger. Okay, so what we have here, I need to adjust the carburetor because I pulled out the adjustment screws out about a turn and a half, so I will need to work on that before this can start properly, so I'll be messing around with that. Hey everybody, how you doing? This is an update. Even though I got the engine put back together, I find out that it's still not starting. And I wondered why that is. Now I went through every other diagnosis that I possibly could, including tearing it back down and turning it the right way with the drill right there, even including the electrical testing, everything again. I now have a compression rating of about 35. So how did that happen? How did it go from just under 70 to 35? Well, the only other time that I have ever had this happen to me was because of the piston ring was stuck and seized. So therefore, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take this apart again, and we're going to take out the piston and we're going to look at the piston ring. The last time it was because there was so much corrosion that was in the cylinder, it was filling in the gaps around the piston, which is why it was able to have compression, because of the corrosion, the rust and stuff that was in there blocking the air. Because I went and washed it out and rinsed everything out, I have this feeling that the piston ring is stuck on the piston, which is not flexing. This is the second time that I will have run into that problem, and so therefore we're gonna I'm 100% positive that is the case in this case. Something to do with the piston ring. So off comes the piston. So I'm gonna get myself set up here so you can watch me do it. Good morning, Sean Carlson, Blackjack 98 Enterprises. This is going to be also included in the video for the original Poulan Pro blower that I'm working on. This will be a separate video for how to remove the piston from that blower. So let me turn the camera around and put it on pause. Okay, so everything came off the engine like it's supposed to. Look, bare. This is the piston cylinder. This is the access hole for the crank. Now, there is two bolts that are holding it in. This one here, which is accessible through this hole, and another one which is accessible through that hole. The size of wrench that you're going to need, this one here is, oh, let me look at this, 3/16. Now, you could use this or a 5mm, but it's going to go into here like this, and this is the only way that you can get at it. Now, that particular nut is probably fried in there because of the heat, because this is the cylinder. This gets very hot, so therefore that will need to be torqued off. Do not use a son of a bitchin' drill to take that off, a hammer drill. Do it by hand only, and once you get that off, you can get that off, and then this cylinder can come off. When this cylinder comes off, that it will pull, this will just come out, and the piston will just be loose, still attached to the block here. Now when you get that cylinder out, you can put it down. This part of the piston will just slide right out, and then you can pull out the piston like, okay, so let me get this off. Okay, so here we got the I cleaned it up using both CLR and Easy Off Oven Cleaner, and this is what it looks like. Looks just a little bit better, but the ring is still stuck. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a torch. I'm going to heat it up a bit, and then I'm going to pick at it with a small screwdriver just to get that loose and removed. Once I get that loose and removed, I'm going to clean it out with a soft brush, CLR and Easy Off Oven Cleaner, and clean everything out and put it back in. Okay, so I know everybody wants to watch me take off the cylinder tip here, and this is now loose. I went and broke the end of my Allen key because it's a Mastercraft, and all Mastercrafts have that end on them, which is right there, which you can see, and it actually broke. I broke that little nib off, and I had to file it down just to get it there, and then I torqued it with this wrench by putting this loop into there. Okay, now we're going to slide this off. Oh, there is a gasket or a seal. There's the piston. Ooh, there we go. There we go. Yes, 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 yes. Woo, okay. Let's look at this. The internal. You can see that there is not too bad for scratch marks. It's just a regular wear that you're seeing in there. I'll feel around with my finger later, but that looks pretty good. So now we're going to look at this part here. We got a gasket, which is right here, a seal. We got to make sure that we don't lose this at all. And we'll just take this off carefully like that and put it aside, and we'll baby that. Now we got access to the piston, and we're going to remove it by sliding it out this direction. You see that? It just slides out nicely. There we go. We're going to put it down right there. Okay, now we're going to look at this part. We could clean this up just a little bit more with a wire brush. This is just a crank now, which attaches to the piston. Everything looks fine as far as I can see. We'll just clean the surface up. So what we're going to do is going to put this right there. Now we're going to look at the piston. Okay, so there is crud around the piston. And it is stuck. I can tell it's stuck. So yes, the reason why we had low compression was because the piston ring is stuck on the piston. Looking around, we can clean this up a whole lot more by soaking it in CLR. Oh, there's a little bit of scratches right there. But you know what, when I rub my fingers on it, I don't feel anything. Okay, yeah, well, you know what? We're just going to clean this up and get rid of this. And the way that I do that is I soak it in Easy Off Oven Cleaner. And then by doing that, we're also going to unseize this piston and put some oil into it to make it so that way it expands a bit more. Because it's not really supposed to look like that. If you look at the straight edge, it's not expanding. It's supposed to stick out just a little bit. Okay? So that is how you take the piston out from the cylinder head. And I'm just looking at everything else here. Okay, good. Ladies and gentlemen, that will be that for this video for the piston removal. Now I'm going to resume the other video for the rebuild of the blower. Alright, so I scraped out the channel for the piston and it looks just a little bit better. The entire piston looks a lot cleaner now. The piston ring itself has also been cleaned and crud removed. It too is sparkling thanks to both CLR and Easy Off Oven Cleaner. So I'm going to put the ring back onto here, and there's a certain way that it goes. So if you look at the end, you see it's kind of got a weird shape to it. That shape goes around that pin right there. So if we were to look at it, that shape needs to go on like this, so it covers that pin. Okay, so I'm going to put this on, and then we're going to clean up this here, just wipe it down a little bit, and then put the cylinder head back onto here. And I'm going to address that after I get this done. Okay, so before I put the piston back into there and this back onto here, I just want to acknowledge the fact that the surface between here and here needs to be sealed, which is why they made this. You just put this onto there nicely. You got to match up the tab that you see on there, that rectangular tab. You put that onto there, and this will help ensure that there's a tight seal between this surface and this one. What you could also do is put gasket sealant, just dab it on the edges here, and then put this onto here. Okay, and that will also help ensure a nice tight air seal between this surface and this surface. The reason why you need an airtight seal is because that will create the compression for the cylinder that is in here. If there's any air escaping through here, it's going to reduce the compression, so we cannot have that. Okay, so after having said that, that is what I will do. I will put a gasket sealant around here and put it onto here, and then tighten it back up with the nuts. These ones here, and these ones need Loctite, and there is Loctite on there, so I don't need too much, but I will also put something on the threads to ensure that when it does go back onto here, those will not come out loose because of the heat. And as you can tell, they're kind of corroded because of the heat of the engine causing carbon onto there. Okay, that's normal for an engine. So that's what you can do when you put these together. Okay, so that's that. Okay, everybody, we have success. We now have a PSI rating of 90. So we now have a PS rating which is a lot better than just under 70. So this should now start up. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to put this back together. Okay, we're gonna do take number 2. So the piston is now free. We got 90 psi compression, which is pretty good for a blower. It's at where it's supposed to be. So everything was put back together exactly like once before. We know we have spark. We know we got an ignition. We know that the fuel is flowing through the primary bulb like it's supposed to when you press it. We know that the carburetor's been cleaned. And now we're gonna test and turn it on. So switch is fine. It's on choke. I'm just gonna set my camera up now. I'm gonna try to start it. And when you start it, do not jerk on this really hard, like give it really slow pulls. If you jerk it out like that, you're gonna kill the keyway that's on the flywheel, and then you would have to replace the entire flywheel. So yeah, when you pull this out, do it slowly and gradually get faster, like brum, 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 not jerk it like brum, brum, brum. Okay, so you're gonna watch me do it. Here we go. Trigger. Okay, so I'm gonna adjust the jets on here. So let me get my screwdriver. Okay, so I'm gonna go out a quarter. Quarter again. Quarter. Okay, everybody, I would say that is a huge success. So I'm just going to mess around with the jets just a little bit more, and then you're going to watch me do a video of this in actual usage. So that's it for now. All right, everybody, that is a success. This now fully functions. And the jets have been adjusted correctly and everything. There was 4 things wrong with this. The number one thing that we found was a clogged fuel line going to the carburetor. The second one was a clogged carburetor port. The third thing was an electrical connection with the spark plug touching the engine block. The fourth thing was the big one. The fourth thing was the stuck piston ring on the piston, which was creating a decreased compression since we cleaned it. It went from 65 to 30, and then once we got everything all done, it went up to 90. So this is now running at 90 psi. So this is the reason why I believe in full engine teardown and rebuilds directly right to the piston, so you can find these details out and you're not nickel and diming your customers, or you're not being ripped off by a mechanic. You know what, now that I think about it, I should do another video on what exactly that you should be asking for when you take your stuff to a mechanic, because not everybody knows how they should be talking to a mechanic, because certain mechanics will nickel and dime you and they will only diagnose one thing at a time and give it back to you until you ask them for a particular service, which I don't disagree with, which I don't agree with. But the customer that I am doing this for, I was gladly able to do everything for him to find out those 4 things. When initially he had said to me that it was the carburetor was not taking in any fuel, that could have meant anything, and I found out throughout the video that you would see me do it, and this is the end result, a fully functioning working product. So I hope you enjoyed the video. It took this is my second day. This is day number 2. The sun's about to go down again, and there's not much more I can say. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like, subscribe, comment, share the videos for everybody else in Vancouver, Canada, that you would like to see be featured on my channel for future repairs, future service, future maintenance, future rebuilds, future whatever, small engine repair. Blackjack 98 Enterprises. Have a good day, everybody.